Hello guys, welcome back. I hope everyone is doing great. So in today's video, I want to talk about some more fragrance discoveries, some samples that I have here. I have 5 decants of fragrances that I have been meaning to get my nose on forever. They've been on my to smell list for a very long time, and I finally got some samples. I did smell these before today's video, but not full wears, so it's not a review of the fragrances, but I do know what these smell like, and some of them were disappointments, I can't lie, and one of them I really love and I want a full bottle of. So let's start with the first one, which is a vanilla fragrance from the house of Indult, and this is Tihota. And I've been meaning to get my nose on this for the longest time. I watch Scented Moments, and this is his favorite vanilla fragrance. And this is not a spray bottle. Most of these that I have here are spray bottles, but this one is not. And I purchased my decants from 2 different places. This one came from the place where the top of the little decant bottle is not large enough to dip the blotter, which is really annoying, but that's okay. We have a lot here on the blotter. This one was a surprise. I expected to get something bright, gourmand, maybe ice cream, vanilla-like, like a creamy scoop of ice cream. I'm not sure why that's what I had in mind and what I expected, but it's a little bit darker in color. It's not as vanilla ice cream as I thought that it would be. What I got in the opening was something along the lines of the inside of a vanilla pod. If you've ever baked with a vanilla pod and you open the vanilla pod and then you scrape the inside, you have this sort of dark brown, grainy material inside the vanilla pod and the vanilla beans. And so that's what I was thinking when I first got my nose on this. As the fragrance develops, I get something a little bit lactonic and something even a little bit chocolatey, but very mild, like a milk chocolate. And the association was to something that I haven't used or drank in years, Ovaltine. If any of you are familiar with the powder, the Ovaltine powder that you would put in milk, in warm milk, I remember I used to do that as a kid. This brought me back to something like that, something milky, something that has a little bit of a milky, chocolatey component, but just a hint, and definitely something a little lactonic in here. It's definitely a gourmand, and it's definitely a vanilla fragrance. It's just not sugary, and it's not as bright as I expected. And when it dries down to something creamy. So there is a cream accord in here. So after I put this on skin and had all these thoughts about the chocolatey components and the Ovaltine and the cereal-like vibe that the fragrance gives me, I looked up the notes, and there are lactonic notes in here that explain that milky quality that I'm getting. There's a cream accord that explains that fluffy, creamy sort of dry down that I get once this dries down. And Francis Kurkdjian is the perfumer behind this fragrance. So the fragrance, like a lot of his fragrances, I find this to be very smooth. And it's not sticky, gloopy, or disgustingly sweet like some other vanilla fragrances can be. So that was a pleasant surprise. It smells like a high quality fragrance. So I do like that. It's not something that I see myself wearing. I feel like if I'm going to wear a vanilla fragrance, I have Celine fragrances to turn to. And then of course I have Guerlain's Shalimar. So this is nice. It's not what I was expecting. It's nicer than what I was expecting when I hear gourmand and I hear vanilla, but it's probably not something that I would add to my collection. But it's a nice one. So that's Tihota. So the next one is from the house of Frederic Malle, and I have been wanting to smell this for the longest time. So this is Synthetic Jungle, which is now Synthetic Nature. And this one, this particular decant, I did order Synthetic Jungle. Now, I believe that they just changed the name, not the perfume. I don't think that this has been reformulated, but I purposely ordered Synthetic Jungle because there's a bottle that I am looking to purchase, and it is Synthetic Jungle. And for some reason, I want the original name on the bottle. I guess it doesn't matter, but for some reason, I want Synthetic Jungle. and not Synthetic Nature. But this is a great one, and I want a full bottle of this soon. So this is a quite green fragrance. In the opening, it's quite green and even herbaceous. There's a basil note in here, but there's also a freshness to the fragrance, and there's something almost a little bit vegetal. So it's not green and dark like being in a forest. It's not green and dark like piney or like a Christmas tree. It's green but fresh. And this is compared often to Diptyque's L'Ombre dans l'eau, which I recently added to my collection, but I do think it's different. I think this one, I think I like this more, especially as it dries down. As the fragrance dries down, I start to get hints of something a little floral, but very, very soft. I feel like any florals in here, and I think there's Lily of the Valley and Hyacinth, any florals in here I feel are a compliment and take a back seat to the greenery in this fragrance, the fresh greenery with the herbaceous sort of aspect. It's a little herbal and a little bit vegetal as well. I feel like I get something almost fig-like. There's something almost a little bit milky and fig-like, but there's no fig listed in the note listing for this. I really, really like this. There's something a little powdery in this fragrance as well, which I love. I like fragrances that have powdery components. This one does have a little bit of a powdery element. And like I said, as the fragrance was drying down, I was trying to pinpoint what fruit might be in here. And I thought I was picking up something like fig, something milky and creamy like a fig note. But there's black currant in here. So it's not fig. I love the freshness that it retains. It's almost like you're walking through a meadow and the grass that you're walking through is a little wet after the rain. Something a little dewy about it as well. Really, really nice. And I think that black currant, together with those soft florals, the florals never overtake. So there's Lily of the Valley, there's jasmine, hyacinth, ylang ylang, never overtake the fragrance. It's more about the fresh greenery to my nose. And the florals are sort of a soft, powdery element in the fragrance. And then you have this basil that's just a little bit of an herbal hint in the fragrance. It's great. I think it's a transportative fragrance. I feel like this fragrance would put me in a certain mood, kind of a calming sort of fragrance. I think it's a calming scent profile. Very nice. So that's Synthetic Nature. So the next one is from the house of Profumum Roma, and this is Audace, and this is a vetiver-focused fragrance. And if you guys are familiar with Profumum Roma, the fragrances, each of them sort of focuses on a particular note. They're very simple, straightforward, high oil concentration. So a lot of them are long lasting, even though they're linear. They're sort of long lasting and they're rich fragrances. And I wanted to get my nose on this one because I do like vetiver fragrances, except those that are masculine leaning. But I do like Hermès's Vetiver Tonka. I have a bottle of that. I also have Chanel's Sycamore. So I like vetiver fragrances. And this one I heard really great things about, and people compare this to Hermès's Vetiver Tonka, but I do not see the similarities. This actually reminds me of another fragrance in the dry down. But what I get from this, in a nutshell, is a vetiver that's paired with woods. So there's cedar wood in here, there's a bitter orange note, and there's licorice. I don't get licorice, and the bitter orange I think does come into play, and the cedar wood absolutely comes into play. The vetiver in here, unlike the vetiver in Vetiver Tonka, is sort of one-dimensional. So Vetiver Tonka opens up with a vetiver that to my nose is just a tad smoky, and then it sort of changes as the fragrance dries down, and I feel like the nutty components come through, and you have the tonka bean, which is also a little nutty as well. And I like how the vetiver starts out smoky and then turns into something a little bit almost like chewy, and that texture that vetiver can have. I say chewy, that's how I describe the texture. And there's something almost a little hazelnut and nutty about that fragrance. I don't get that here. This one, to me, the vetiver comes off kind of one-dimensional, and I do get something a little bit chewy in texture, and maybe something a little bit nutty, but I feel like I don't get all the facets of the vetiver in here. So as the fragrance dries down, you definitely notice the cedarwood. It's, to my nose, all about the vetiver paired with the cedarwood. The licorice, I'm not really picking out, and I love that sort of thing in fragrance, but to my nose, that might be something subtle. And as the fragrance continues to dry down, that's when it reminds me of Byredo's Bal d'Afrique. And there's something that comes off almost a little bit, not fruity, but maybe a hint of something fruity, the same way that Bal d'Afrique sort of gives me something almost a little bit fruity. And I don't even know what the notes are in that fragrance, but the more this dries down, the more it reminds me of Bal d'Afrique, a fragrance that I just added to my collection, actually, and that's been around for a long time. But this one in the dry down does remind me a little bit of Bal d'Afrique. It hints at that scent profile. And I think that it's the bitter orange note that maybe interplays with the cedarwood and with the vetiver, and it gives me the impression that there's something almost a little bit fruity in the fragrance. But when I say fruit, I don't mean something bright and very prominent in the fragrance. I just get a subtle hint. This is all about vetiver and cedarwood. But like I said, the vetiver doesn't come off like a smoky vetiver. It's not a grassy vetiver. It's a vetiver that has a little bit of that sort of like chewy consistency, and maybe has a little bit of that nuttiness that comes along with vetiver. So it is all about vetiver, but the cedarwood plays a big role in here as well. So that's Audace. So the next one is from the house of Aedes de Venustas, a 2025 release from the house. And this one is called Sueno Lento. And this I wanted to get my nose on because it was a new release, and it popped up as a new release when I was purchasing some other samples. And I like the house of Aedes de Venustas. I have Iris Nazarena, which I really like. This one I can't say would be for me. So this one suffers from the rich, gloopy, syrupy sweetness in a lot of recent releases. It opens with a sort of fruity combination. It's mango and fig. I think pink mango and fig. And there are a lot of spices in here as well, aromatic spices. I think cardamom and some other spices like peppery spices as well. And even though there are these fruits and there's this fig and mango, it's not bright because they're sort of taken into this sort of spiced, aromatic, darker direction, woody as well. But along with this comes this sort of syrupy, thick wear to the fragrance and thick sweetness as well. So the sweetness doesn't come off like a sugary sweetness. It's not a bright fragrance. It's spiced and it's fruity and it's sweet, but the sweetness has a sort of darkened quality to it. It does come off like a complex fragrance. It does come off like a fragrance that has a lot of different components at play, and a fragrance that sort of changes from the opening as it dries down. So I think there's complexity in here. It's interesting. This has the sweetness and the synthetic qualities that I just don't like. Even though the sweetness is darkened with the spices, it's still nonetheless too sweet, too gloopy, too synthetic. As I smell it off the blotter, I do get the hints of the fruit, but like I said, they're darkened. I get the woods in here, and it's very peppery. So there's Brazilian red pepper, there's also pink pepper, there's Davana, there is a bergamot zest at the top, and then you have the fig and the pink mango, and then you have suede, although I'm not getting anything suedey about the fragrance, or textured, I'm not. There is frankincense, so there is an incense that runs through the fragrance, but it's not something that overtakes or is super obvious to my nose. And then you have amber, gaiac wood, and it says Mysore sandalwood and patchouli. It's a little too synthetic smelling, and I find the combination of the fruits together with these sort of peppery spices in here to be a little bit out of place, like incongruent. So I'm not crazy about this one. So let me know in the comments if you're familiar with this one. So the last one that I have is from the house of Amouage, and this is Lineage, a 2023 release from the house, and I can't believe it took me this long to get a sample of Lineage. I've been wanting to get my nose on this one, and I've been meaning to get a sample of Existence as well. So, like I said, this was released in 2023. This has a very strong opening. It just went up my nose. And the perfumer is Karine Vinchon-Spenner. This is all about incense. And in the opening, I was taken aback. It's quite strong. It opens with this churchy, smoky, almost a little dark incense. And within minutes, right behind this sort of strong opening, comes something marine-like, and I can't quite put my finger on it. And I'm not a big fan of marine fragrances. There's something a little salty about it. And so I was definitely put off once that marine quality sort of came through right behind that churchy incense in the opening. And then as the fragrance continued to develop, I had this on skin a few times. I feel like I get woody components in here, but in the note listing is frankincense in the mid and in the base. At the top, you have ginger, you have Peruvian pepper, Szechuan pepper, and saffron. And then there's labdanum, there's patchouli, there's vetiver, there's benzoin, there's myrrh. So there are a lot of resinous sort of qualities in here. But the fragrance at the end of the day is all about incense and this marine quality. And I feel like the marine quality is what's off-putting to my nose because I just don't like that in fragrance. And I find that this combination between the incense and the marine quality in the fragrance to be a little bit off-putting. It's very strange to my nose. And I know that there are people that love this, but for me, this is not an incense fragrance that I would ever reach for or that I would wear. I just don't like the scent profile. I feel like I get spices as well together with this like salty marine quality, and the incense is always there all the way to the dry down. You definitely don't lose the incense in this fragrance. It's what the fragrance is all about. And in the full dry down, there's something that comes off a little bit bitter to my nose together with this sort of marine salty quality and the incense that's still there. I get something bitter, and I think it could be the fenugreek, which is a spice that's adding warmth in here, but I think it's coming off bitter to my nose. So this was a disappointment, unfortunately. So let me know in the comments what you guys think of Lineage. So that's it for today, guys. That's my take on these 5 fragrances. Synthetic Nature or Synthetic Jungle is definitely going to be a full bottle for me. Beautiful fragrance. Let me know in the comments if you guys are familiar with any of these and what you guys think. And as always, thank you so much for watching, your support, and your comments. Until next time, bye guys.